The Garden Beyond Time. Prologue. There are moments, quiet, delicate ones, that do not belong to any particular hour. They drift between seconds, too soft for clocks to catch, too subtle for calendars to claim. I have always been drawn to those moments. When I was young, I thought of time as a road stretching out before me. But now, I know it is more like a garden path that bends with the wind. A path I can follow not just forward, but inward. Down into the soil of memory, and up into the leaves of dreams. That's how it began. Not with thunder or a sudden flash, but with a pause, a breath held by the universe, into which I quietly stepped. I didn't mean to travel through time. But I did. Or perhaps time traveled through me. Chapter 1, The Meadow Clock. The first sign was a shimmer in the grass. I had wandered beyond the usual path, out into the quiet folds of a forgotten meadow. The wind carried the scent of something warm and sweet, like citrus and cedarwood. My feet brushed the tall, silver-tinged grass, and then I saw it, just beneath the sway of a dandelion puff. A clock, half buried in soil. Not ticking. Not rusted. Simply, waiting. Its face was smooth, pearlescent. The hands didn't point to any number, but rather spiraled gently inward. I reached down and placed my hand on its cool surface. And the world changed, softly, slowly. The meadow around me faded into tones of rose and lavender. The sky bent gently at the edges. The air shimmered, and then settled, as if time itself had taken a long breath and exhaled. I was no longer in a place I recognized. But I didn't feel lost. I felt held. Chapter 2, The Sky That Remembers. The air here was different, warmer, but not hot. It moved around me like a soft ribbon, winding gently around my arms and face. I walked without knowing where the path led, because there was no path, only the soft cushion of moss beneath my feet. Above me, the sky held colors I had never known. Not blue or gray, but a shade that changed with each breath, lavender, blush, golden mist, periwinkle. The clouds drifted not as shapes, but as memories, curling like smoke in the late evening sun. As I tilted my head upward, I saw one of the clouds shimmer and curl inward. Within it, a faint image appeared, a boy running through tall grass, laughter spilling behind him like petals on the wind. His smile was wide, and though I didn't know him, he felt familiar, like someone I once dreamed about but never met. The sky was remembering. And somehow, I was remembering, too. I sat down beneath a tree with silver leaves, each one tinkling softly like a wind chime whenever a breeze passed. The tree didn't offer shade, but presence. I leaned back against its trunk and let the moments pass through me, as soft as falling feathers. There was no need to think. Only to be. Chapter 3, The Garden Without Time. I do not recall standing up, and yet I found myself walking again, through what seemed to be a garden, but unlike any I had ever seen. The flowers did not bloom in rows or clusters. They hovered, gently spinning just above the earth, their petals opening and closing in slow, steady rhythms. Each one glowed faintly. Not like a light bulb or a flame, but like memory, warm, distant, comforting. I reached out to one, and it drifted closer to my palm. Inside its soft center, I saw the image of an old woman stirring a pot in a sunlit kitchen. The scent of cinnamon and honey rose through the air around me. I was not there, and yet I was. Another flower opened. A pair of hands shaping clay on a wheel. A soft hum echoed in the distance. This garden did not grow time. It grew echoes, echoes of quiet days, of gentle hours, of forgotten afternoons that still lived, quietly, here. I wandered between the blossoms, each one offering a fragment, a whisper, a sigh. Eventually, I sat on the edge of a small pool, the water completely still. My reflection was not my own. Or rather, it was, but from a different time. A version of me with softer eyes and slower breath. We watched each other, and neither of us needed to speak. Chapter 4: The Path of Hollow Stones. The garden faded without farewell, and I found myself walking along a path made of hollow stones. Each step sounded different, like tapping on a cup of porcelain. The sound did not echo outward, it folded inward, like raindrops on a quiet lake. The stones were not cold. They held warmth, the kind that seeps from an old quilt or a sunlit windowsill. With every step, I felt myself slowing, not from weariness, but from peace. I walked for what might have been moments or years. Time did not matter here. The path meandered through gently swaying fields of grass that whispered stories in a language I couldn't understand but somehow knew. I sat for a while on a smooth stone that hummed quietly. The hum was not a song, but it comforted me like one. In the distance, I saw a small archway made of ivy and mist. I stood, walked to it, and passed through, not with purpose, but with openness. Chapter 5: The House of Gentle Things. It stood like a memory, a cottage made of wood and velvet and morning light. Ivy curled around the windows. The door opened not with a creak, but with a sigh. Inside, the walls were lined with shelves, each holding objects wrapped in silence, a teacup with no handle, a scarf woven from rain, a music box filled with nothing but breath. I wandered slowly. The floor creaked kindly underfoot. In the corner, a chair rocked on its own, not from wind, but from remembering. I sat down beside a table with a book upon it. The book opened, and its pages filled themselves, not with words, but with images. A field of soft wheat. A bird gliding just above the surface of a quiet river. A candle burning in an empty chapel. The pages turned at their own pace. I watched them, and the minutes, or days, moved like syrup. Eventually, I closed the book. Not because it was finished, but because the story was still being written, in the space between each heartbeat. Chapter 6: The Mirror Tree. I found it near the edge of a grove, standing alone, a tree with bark as smooth as polished stone, reflecting not light, but memory. Its branches swayed in a rhythm not guided by the wind but by something older and slower. As I approached, the surface shimmered, revealing fragments of myself, not as I was, but as I had been across countless unnamed moments. Me, sitting by a window during a quiet rain. Me, walking along a beach, listening to the distant calls of birds I could not name. Me, laughing with someone I no longer remembered but felt I once loved. The tree did not speak, but it offered something. A kind of permission. I placed my hand on its trunk, and warmth passed into my skin, not heat, but recognition. You are still becoming, it seemed to say, without words. And I stayed a while, until the reflections softened and the tree began to glow, as if satisfied. Chapter 7: The River That Sang. The ground sloped gently downward until it reached a wide river that moved so slowly it seemed not to flow at all. Its surface was clear, but beneath it, colors danced, shades I couldn't name, hues that didn't exist anywhere else. And the river sang. Not in melody, but in murmurs. Whispers. Gentle cadences that folded into one another, like silk layers slipping across skin. I found a small boat, crafted of reeds and feathers, waiting at the shore. No oars. No ropes. Just readiness. I stepped in, and it began to drift, not carried by current, but by intention. As the boat moved, the river's song grew softer, more distant, until it felt like part of me, something inside my chest that had always been there but had waited until now to be heard. We passed willows that wept not tears, but light. Stones that glowed faintly beneath the surface. And far in the distance, a mist that shimmered like memory. When the boat came to rest, I stepped onto a shore that felt familiar, though I had never seen it before. Chapter 8, The Library of Unspoken Things. Tucked behind a hill that curled like a sigh, I found the library. It had no walls, only archways woven from vines and breath. The books inside were not books at all, but shapes, some wrapped in silk, others suspended in gentle spirals of smoke. Each one held something that had never been said. A kindness never voiced. A goodbye never spoken. A hope that was never shared aloud. I touched one, and the memory unfolded, not mine, but real. A girl sitting beside her father, holding his hand but saying nothing. The silence between them full of meaning, soft as wool. Another shape drifted toward me. A man standing at a train platform, smiling gently at someone he did not approach. The library was not heavy. It was not sad. It simply held what had not been said, and made it beautiful. I lingered there, walking between the shelves of silence, listening to what the world had chosen to hold in quiet. Chapter 9, The Clockmaker's Garden. Beyond the library, a narrow path wound toward a garden filled with clocks, but none of them worked. Their hands hung loosely. Their faces were blank or covered in ivy. But the garden thrived. Flowers bloomed in soft pulses. Trees bore fruit shaped like spirals. In the center stood a small table, and on it, a cup of tea that steamed gently, though no one had poured it. I sat beside the table, and time seemed to curl up at my feet like a sleeping cat. The clocks didn't mark hours. They marked moments, the kind that pass so gently, they are often missed. A child's hand resting on a parent's knee. The pause before a thought becomes a word. The way sunlight rests on the spine of a book. I closed my eyes and listened, not to ticking, but to being. Chapter 10, The House at the Edge of Time. I followed a winding staircase that led upward through clouds of dandelion fluff, until I reached a house that stood not on land, but on memory. Its walls were made of things forgotten, a button from a coat never worn again, a photo without a face, the scent of rain on pavement. Inside, the rooms changed as I moved. One held a quilt made of whispered promises. Another contained a mirror that showed me standing still while everything else moved. At the end of a narrow hallway, a door opened to a room with no floor, only stars. I stepped out and stood on nothing. Or perhaps everything. Above me, the ceiling rippled like water. Beneath me, constellations blinked as if in recognition. And in that moment, I understood. Time is not a straight line. It is not a loop dot. It is a breath dot. And I was floating within it. Chapter 11, The Lantern Grove. Beyond the starry threshold, I found myself standing within a grove lit entirely by floating lanterns. They drifted gently through the air like fireflies with nowhere to be. Each one carried a glow of a different hue, soft rose, amber, pale green, dusky blue, and within each, a tiny image flickered. A pair of hands threading a needle in candlelight. A bird landing on a fence post in early spring. An elderly man pouring tea for a guest who never arrived. The lanterns didn't need to be understood. They simply needed to be noticed. I walked slowly, letting their lights guide my pace. When I paused beneath one, it dipped low and hovered beside me. The image it held was of a path through a snowy forest. A child was walking alone but did not seem afraid. The snowflakes shimmered like crystal dust, and though no words were spoken, I could feel the warmth in that stillness. As I continued, more lanterns gathered above me like stars following a gentle current. Their soft hum followed me deeper into the grove, where light became breath, and time felt like a story whispered just before it fades. Chapter 12, The Bridge Made of Wind. Past the grove, the air grew lighter, as though filled with music too delicate to hear. Before me stretched a bridge, but it was not built of stone or wood. It was made entirely of wind. Invisible, yet felt. Cool, yet comforting. It held me as I stepped onto it, my feet never quite touching anything solid, yet never falling. Below the bridge, there was nothing but softness, a sea of shifting colors, as if morning light had been spilled into clouds. I moved forward, each step slower than the last, not because of doubt, but because of peace. On the far side, a gate waited, not grand, not heavy, but simple. Carved from driftwood, wrapped in vines that shimmered with dew. When I reached it, it did not open. It dissolved. And I walked through. Chapter 13, The Echoing Room. I entered a room where nothing had edges. The walls were not walls but intentions, soft curves of thought, bathed in colors that responded to breath. Each exhale brought a warmer hue. Each blink revealed another layer of stillness. In the center, a chair waited. I sat. Around me, echoes began to gather, not loud, not insistent. Just memories shaped as sound. A laugh from long ago. The shuffle of feet on a dusty floor. The whisper of curtains drawn at dusk. They circled me gently, like friends arriving not to speak, but simply to sit beside me. I closed my eyes. And in that pause, I could feel the presence of every quiet moment I had ever passed by without notice. Now, they noticed me. Chapter 14, The Cloud Orchard. When I opened my eyes, the room had faded. I was standing again, now in an orchard suspended in the sky. The trees floated, roots untethered, leaves hanging like lace. Their fruit shimmered like small moons, each one pulsing with gentle energy. As I walked, the ground beneath me moved softly, like a boat rocked by invisible tides. I reached up and touched one of the fruits. It dissolved into light, which wrapped around my fingers and drifted into my chest like smoke. Inside it, I saw a moment, my own, perhaps. Me standing at a train station, watching the doors close, not stepping forward, not stepping back. The orchard bore no sound, only the breath of wind curling through translucent leaves. I wandered slowly, touching only a few of the fruits, letting each one remind me of something I hadn't realized I had forgotten. Chapter 15, The Silence Below. Eventually, the orchard faded, and I found myself descending, not falling, but floating downward, as if riding a warm current through dusk. Beneath me, there was only silence. And yet it was not empty. It was full of listening. I arrived at a vast plain of velvet dark soil, where the stars above mirrored themselves in the earth. Every step made no sound, but left behind a brief shimmer, like footprints made of thought. Here, I walked without direction. I wandered in wide, slow arcs. I had no questions. The silence didn't offer answers, only comfort. And slowly, gently, I began to feel the edges of myself soften, like a stone held for years in the palm of a stream. Chapter 16, The Memory Well. The silence led me to a clearing. At its center stood a well, not made of stone, but woven from branches and mist. There was no bucket, no rope. Only the opening, perfectly round, still, and dark as velvet. I approached without hesitation. My reflection did not appear on the surface. Instead, I saw flickers, gentle movements, like dreams drifting upward. I leaned closer. And I remembered. Not a single event, but a feeling, the hush just before rain touches earth. The way light pools at the base of a closed curtain. The sensation of someone reaching for your hand, and choosing not to let go. The well held memories not stored in words but in senses, in small moments overlooked by days filled with doing. I sat beside it, not to draw anything out, but to let something return to me, something quiet and important and unspoken. The well did not speak, but I felt heard. Chapter 17, The Loom of Hours. When I stood again, the air shimmered with the color of lavender dusk. I followed a narrow path lined with reeds that whispered as I passed. At the end, there was a loom, tall, ancient, delicate, woven from moonlight and quiet breath. Threads floated in the air around it, waiting. As I stepped closer, they responded. The loom began to weave. Not with hands, not with gears, but with stillness. The threads wove into a tapestry that showed not images, but impressions. A laugh that changed someone's day. A moment of patience between strangers. A song hummed beneath breath while washing dishes. I understood then that time was not measured in minutes, but in meaning. And this loom wove not hours, but presence. I stayed and watched until the tapestry became too gentle to see. Chapter 18, The Field of Unfinished Songs. The next place I found was a field of tall grass, swaying in rhythm with a music I couldn't quite hear. Each blade moved as if humming a tune remembered only in part. Scattered through the field were instruments without players, a cello, a flute, a harp woven from branches and silver thread. I touched the harp, and it sang, not a song, but a sigh. A longing. A note that had waited years to be heard. The wind carried melodies from nowhere. Some stopped mid-phrase. Others looped a single chord like a lullaby that never needed an ending. I wandered among them, my pace slowing with each step. I did not feel unfinished. I felt open. And the songs accepted me just as I was. Chapter 19, The Staircase of Falling Leaves. A single leaf drifted past me, golden, slow, patient. Then another. then dozens more, spiraling from above. I looked up to see a staircase formed entirely of leaves, suspended in air. Each one glowing softly, yet firm beneath my feet as I stepped onto them. With each step, a new scent rose: cinnamon, cedar, rain on stone, warm wool. The world around me faded into gentle shades of amber and mauve. The higher I climbed, the quieter it became, until there was only the sound of my own breath, and even that softened. At the top, there was no room. No hall. Only a space that felt like an embrace. I stood there for a long time, or no time at all. Chapter 20, The Window Without Glass. Eventually, I found a window standing alone, framed by vines and starlight. There was no wall, only the frame, and beyond it, a view unlike any I had ever known. It showed not a place, but a possibility. A version of the world where every moment was met with softness. Where time moved not as a ruler, but as a companion. Where nothing rushed. I did not step through the window. I sat beside it. And I watched. The scenes shifted slowly: a child asleep beneath a tree, hand curled around a favorite stone dot. A baker placing a final loaf on a shelf as the sun rose. A pair of friends walking in silence, their footsteps matching without effort. The window held them all, not as stories, but as truths. And I, too, became part of the view. Chapter 21, The Room Between Days. After a time, the window faded into soft mist, and I found myself in a room that did not seem to have been built, but grown. The floor was a patchwork of woven reeds and soft moss. The walls flickered with the light of things that had not yet happened. Here, I felt no weight. Not from thought, nor time, nor self. The room did not ask anything of me. It simply held me. I lay on the moss, and the ceiling above me rippled like water beneath moonlight. A sound like breath, slow and round, filled the space. It wasn't mine. Or maybe it was. I drifted, not away, but inward. Chapter 22, The Clock with No Hands. It stood beneath a canopy of quiet fog, resting on a pedestal of woven roots and smooth stone. The clock had no hands. No numbers. Only a face made of soft light, shifting gently like ripples in a pond. I stood before it and listened. Not with ears, but with presence. The air around the clock was heavy with kindness. As if all it had ever done was wait, not to be understood, but to be noticed. Without hands, it marked no hour. Without numbers, it kept no measure. And yet, it knew time. Not in lines or loops, but in stillness. I sat at its base and closed my eyes. Not because I was tired, but because I was full. And for a while, the world held no before and no after. Only now. Only here. Chapter 23, The Gentle Place. I do not remember rising. But I found myself walking again, through a place softer than silence. There was no ground, no sky, only space filled with warmth and motionless light. Shapes passed like thoughts, curved, slow, kind. Colors unfolded and refold, as if breathing with me. There was no up or down. No beginning. No destination. Here, nothing asked to be done. Only to be noticed. Only to be shared. I drifted. And the place drifted with me. Chapter 24, the field that waits. Eventually, I found myself in a field made of dusk. The grass here glowed just enough to be seen. It swayed in rhythm with something very old and very patient. I walked through it slowly. Each step a thought. Each breath a path. Each pause a quiet invitation. At the center of the field stood a single chair, wooden, round, worn smooth by years that didn't pass. I sat down. And the sky opened like a book. No words. Just space. And light. Chapter 25, The Fold in the World. I noticed it while watching the horizon, just a gentle crease, like a page turned too many times. A fold in the world. I stepped toward it, not to leave, but to enter more deeply. As I moved, I felt layers peel back, the shape of time, the sound of longing, the color of being. And then I was through. There was no fanfare. No shift. Just a quiet knowing. Like settling into the perfect shape of one's own breath. Chapter 26, The Lantern Inside. At the center of everything, beneath all the layers and fields and rivers and skies, was a single lantern. It hung in air. Small. Still. Its light did not reach outward. It glowed inward. As I approached, I realized it had always been with me. I had carried it through every place, every pause, every step. Not a guide. Not a tool. Just presence. I touched it. And it didn't flare. It didn't dim. It simply accepted me. Chapter 27, The Return Without Distance. There was no going back. Because I had never truly left. Each step I took through the orchard, the grove, the stairs, the fields, they were not journeys outward, but inward. Not departure. Not return. But deepening. And now, I stood where I had always been. The place between moments. The fold in a breath. The whisper in time. Chapter 28, The Final Room. I opened a door I did not remember closing. And I was there. The room was neither large nor small. It had no windows, no walls. It was built of memory and mist. In the center, a low bed of moss and woven light. I lay down, not because I was weary, but because the world had grown quiet enough to welcome stillness. Above me, soft currents of color moved like stories ending slowly. The room faded, or perhaps I did. But not completely. Not ever. Just enough. Epilogue, whispers through time. Somewhere, a breeze moves through tall grass. Somewhere, a river hums a tune it never finishes. Somewhere, a lantern glows gently in the hands of someone who no longer seeks, but simply is. And somewhere, perhaps here, perhaps now, a whisper folds into the space between your thoughts, carrying with it nothing urgent, nothing loud. Only this. You were never far. You were always here. And time has always been kind.